안녕하세요. 안녕하세요.
네. I don't know what his staff seem to have.
Testing.
Ladies and gentlemen, could I ask you to take your seats, and those of you who thought there was a coffee break, return into the room. We have a very important issue to discuss in the days running up to this year's Shangri-La Dialogue. Every single person I spoke to about the Shangri-La Dialogue said that they were looking forward to it to understand more about how the North Korean crisis might be de-escalated. For much of the last year, debate and discussion on security in Asia has turned on the question of North Korean nuclear weapons, its growing ballistic missile capability, and the balance between a diplomatic solution to the crisis and the possible need to use military force to deter or eliminate that capacity. At present, it is very much the diplomatic route that is in the ascendant, and it is one on which the international community is placing all its hopes. And so I invite you to listen to three personalities whose countries have been central to the efforts to seek a diplomatic solution to this proliferation challenge. And the three ministers that we have before you today will speak in the order that they appear on the program, let me say 30 seconds about each of them. We're delighted to receive Minister of National Defense of the Republic of Korea, Youngmoo. The IISS organizes a Shangri-La Sherpa meeting in January, 5 or 6 months ahead of each Shangri-La Dialogue. We call it the Fullerton Forum because we hold it at the Fullerton Hotel here in Singapore. And each year we get one, sometimes we're lucky enough to have 2 ministers address the senior officials of the participating states in the Shangri-La Dialogue who come in January to Singapore in order to prepare the way for the Shangri-La Dialogue. And we were delighted this year Minister Singh was part of that effort, and pleased to receive him again 5 months later here for the Shangri-La Dialogue that he so ably helped to prepare. I'm delighted personally again to receive Onodera-san, the Minister of Defense of Japan. He has come to the Shangri-La Dialogue before when he previously held the office of Minister of National Defense. I was delighted on one of my recent visits to Japan when he was not in the office of Minister of National Defense to receive him in his Diet office, and we discussed the issues of defense on which he has become so expert. And I'm delighted, I think, for the 3rd successive year to receive at the Shangri-La Dialogue our friend Harjit Singh Sajjan, and as the Secretary of Defense of the United States mentioned in his remarks today in answer to questions, Canada played an important role in January, receiving in its Pacific capital, so to speak, Vancouver, many of the countries that were engaged on the Korean Peninsula in order to advance the diplomatic efforts that were then just nascent. So we have 3 great authorities on this matter, and without any further delay, could I invite Minister Song of the Republic of Korea to address the Shangri-La Dialogue.
First and foremost, I would like to express my gratitude to Dr. John Chipman and the IISS for giving me the chance to speak at the world-renowned Shangri-La Dialogue. Moreover, I'm highly delighted for the opportunity to share my thoughts on denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula and peace and prosperity in the Asia-Pacific with defense ministers and security experts from all around the world. Back in January at the Fullerton Forum in Singapore, I spoke about multilateral security cooperation in the Asia-Pacific. Today, I would like to evaluate the efforts for denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula and their impact on regional security, introduce President Moon Jae-in's vision and principle for his Korean Peninsula policy, and finally share with you the ways in which the international community can cooperate for denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula and for peace and prosperity in Asia-Pacific. The Korean Peninsula is a significant turning point, moving beyond the military standoff that has lasted for decades and towards denuclearization and peace building. Last year, we faced a situation of elevating military tension due to North Korea's nuclear missile test and international community's condemnation and sanctions, followed by North Korea's additional provocations in response to those sanctions. However, thanks to President Moon Jae-in's sincere and continued efforts, North Korea participated in the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics, which created an atmosphere of peace. These efforts culminated in the meeting between the leaders of the two Koreas as the entire world looked on. The summit was the first of its kind in 11 years, and the first to be held inside the demilitarized zone. Through serious dialogue and the adoption of the Panmunjom Declaration, we have taken the first step towards denuclearization of the lasting on the Korean Peninsula. Through Panmunjom Declaration, the two leaders agreed to denuclearize and establish a permanent peace regime on the Korean Peninsula, alleviate the military tension and to respect mutual non-aggression agreement, and engage in comprehensive and unprecedented efforts to develop the inter-Korean relations. After the inter-Korean summit's success, a new path has been opened up towards peaceful denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, and Northeast Asia is ushering in a new era of diplomacy. Chairman Kim Jong-un has met President Xi Jinping. Korea, China, and Japan held a trilateral summit after a 2-year hiatus. Secretary of State Pompeo met Chairman Kim in Pyongyang, and North Korea took a forward-looking action to release the 3 American prisoners. President Moon Jae-in met with President Trump last week to discuss approaches for denuclearizing the Korean Peninsula, and on the 26th of May met with Chairman Kim in Panmunjom again to engage in an in-depth discussion on the U.S.-North Korea summit and follow-up measures to the Panmunjom Declaration. Ten days from now, the historic U.S.-North Korea summit is expected to be held in this very city of Singapore. A dramatic change has come for the security environment of the Korean Peninsula and Northeast Asia. I would like to note that the U.S. government, especially President Trump's strong leadership, has been a great support in achieving the success of the inter-Korean summits and in setting the current atmosphere of dialogue. North Korea has ceased nuclear tests and missile launches and has taken a decisive measure to dismantle the Punggye-ri nuclear test site. Since the leaders of the U.S. and North Korea remain committed to meeting face-to-face for complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, and all relevant parties support the dialogue between North Korea and the U.S., I'm certain that the Singapore summit will indeed take place. The Korean people, as well as the international community, hope that President Trump and Chairman Kim would come to a historical agreement for complete denuclearization and permanent peace on the Korean Peninsula. If the upcoming summit achieves success, then we will be given a precious opportunity to assure peace and prosperity not only to the Northeast Asia but also around the world. When this becomes a reality, the Singapore summit will be comparable to the Malta summit between the U.S. and the Soviet Union that marked the beginning of the end of the Cold War in 1989, which will be a milestone in history. As President Moon once mentioned, Nobel Prize for President Trump and peace for the Korean Peninsula. President Trump's effort will be highly praised by the international community. Distinguished guests, the objective of achieving denuclearization and establishing lasting peace in the Korean Peninsula is not just the interest to the Republic of Korea and the U.S. North Korea's nuclear and missile problem is a common security challenge that disrupts peace and prosperity not on the Korean Peninsula, but also in the region and around the globe. The world we live in today is a highly networked one, where all countries and regions are closely connected. The world may be far apart geographically, but as a result of technological development, we are far closer in terms of time it takes to reach each other. The fact that it took a week to cross the Mediterranean Sea from the Italian peninsula to Carthage in the Roman times, whereas it only takes half a day to cross the vast Pacific Ocean today, illustrate this well. In such world, one nation's security issue seriously affects security and economy of its neighbors and the region. Above all else, North Korea's development of nuclear weapons and missiles is the most grave and pressing security problem for the entire international community. If we achieve complete denuclearization and establish permanent peace on the Korean Peninsula, it will greatly contribute to creating a peaceful regional security environment. Moreover, North Korea has pledged to pursue economic policy and has moved away from the so-called dual track of policy of nuclear and economy. If it indeed pursues genuine reforms to open up its country, it will add to the vibrant energy of the Asia-Pacific economy and financial system, home to 4.4 billion people. It will lead us to the path of shared prosperity. Recognizing how security situation on the Korean Peninsula impacts the security of the region and the world, the Moon Jae-in administration, since taking office last May, has maintained its vision of peaceful coexistence, joint prosperity. It has pursued policies to bring permanent peace and prosperity on the Korean Peninsula without threats of nuclear weapons or war. To this end, we have continued to pursue the objectives of easing military tension by resolving North Korea's nuclear issue, establishing peace regime of the Korean Peninsula, and working towards sustainable development of the inter-Korea relations. The Moon Jae-in administration will remain committed to following principles and implementing policies for peace and prosperity on the Korean Peninsula. First, as a party of immediate interest, the Republic of Korea will make its best efforts for inter-Korean reconciliation and cooperation, as well as toward establishing peace and prosperity on the Korean Peninsula. Second, as we enter a new era of peace, we will gradually ease military tension along the demilitarized zone. We will go beyond keeping peace and work towards making peace. Third, in recognition of the differences between the two Koreas, we will maintain our stance of three no's: no desire for the North collapse, no pursuit of unification by absorption, and no pursuit of unification through artificial means. Fourth, through every step of the way, we will engage in close cooperation with the international community to pursue co-prosperity with our neighbors and elicit the international community support for the peaceful unification. As the Minister of National Defense, I will hold consultation with North Korean counterparts on military issues stated in Panmunjom Declaration, which includes ceasing all acts of hostility, transforming the DMZ into a peace zone in a substantive manner, establishing maritime peace zone around the northern limit line in the LOC. The two Korean defense authorities we will take easier gradual step-by-step approaches to alleviate the military tension and build trust, starting with issues that are easier to reach an agreement on. However, in pursuing the Korean Peninsula peace process, the Moon Jae-in administration will not repeat the same mistakes of the past. Based on the past experience of failure to implement inter-Korean agreements over the last 70 years of separation and standoff, we will exert all of our efforts to ensure success this time. Distinguished guests, North Korean nuclear and missile issue is a major global security problem of a whole new level in terms of its severity and urgency. Fortunately, the issue of denuclearization and establishing peace on the peninsula seems to finally have taken the first step towards the right path. This was only made possible by a trinity of consistent and sincere implementation of Moon Jae-in's Korean Peninsula policy, strategic decision made by North Korean Chairman Kim, and international community's united efforts led by the U.S. Now, to achieve more tangible results, what we need is an honest dialogue to find a rational solution between the leaders of the U.S. and North Korea. Both Chairman Kim Jong-un and President Trump sincerely desire the U.S.-North Korea summit to be successful. On multiple occasions, Chairman Kim has declared his intent to achieve complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, and President Trump has stated his commitment to ending hostilities and engaging in common cooperation with North Korea should it dismantle its nuclear program. This is a rare opportunity, and we must be successful this time. Defense ministers and security experts from all around the world. The success of the U.S.-North Korea summit is dependent on the international community's consistent support. We urge the international community to stand united our diplomatic efforts to make sure North Korea continues to advance along the path of denuclearization. There is a saying, to go far, go together. In order to seize this chance brought by tireless efforts and to turn this into an opportunity for peace and prosperity for Korea and the world, the Moon Jae-in administration will walk with you together, no matter how far and how tough the road may be. We dream of peaceful Korean Peninsula, one without weapons of war. We dream of Northeast Asia that prospers together. We ask for close cooperation by each member of the international community to realize our dream. Distinguished guests, at the end of dark days of confrontation and tension last year, we heard the message of peace and harmony at this year's Pyeongchang Winter Olympics. And through the two Inter-Korea Summit, we are finally seeing peace approaching the Korean Peninsula. We are changing the course of history. The upcoming U.S.-North Korea Summit will be a historic occasion to put an end to the history of war and confrontation on the peninsula and bring about a new era of peace and prosperity. Of course, we know that the path towards complete denuclearization and permanent peace will not be an easy one. But we must make full use on this precious opportunity to achieve the outcomes that everyone desires. Once again, we ask for your help so that we can share the peace and prosperity beyond the peninsula with the entire world. Thank you, IISS, again for this opportunity. Please accept my sincere wishes for everyone's health and happiness. Thank you for listening.
Minister Soon, thank you very much for those remarks and in particular clarifying the three no's: no desire for North Korea's collapse, no pursuit of unification by absorption, and no pursuit of unification through artificial means. And I'm sure in the discussion we'll explore that a little bit more. Could I now ask to address the second plenary of the Shangri-La Dialogue, the Minister of National Defense of Japan, Onodera-san.
Thank you, Dr. Chipman. Ladies and gentlemen, the distinguished guests, to invite us. Thank you to invite us. To begin with, I am going to speak in Japanese. So please prepare the headset for translation. Okay. Chipman.
Dr. Chipman, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I am truly honored to attend this year's Shangri-La Dialogue for the first time in 4 years since I last attended as Defense Minister. I'm delighted to take the podium here in Singapore to discuss the North Korean situation. This is undoubtedly the most crucial and imminent topic within the current security environment, given the planned U.S.-North Korean summit on 12th June in this city. I'm particularly delighted to join my two fellow ministers, Minister of National Defense Song from the Republic of Korea, who is working tirelessly to progress dialogue with North Korea, and Minister of National Defense, Sajjan from Canada, the hosting country of the G7 summit meeting next week, to lead the discussion on the North Korean issue. I would like to express my profound gratitude to the International Institute for Strategic Studies and those concerned in the government of Singapore for hosting such an important dialogue at this time. Today, I wish to share some of what Japan is doing to resolve the issue of North Korea, as well as Japan's determination in working towards long-term stability and development of the Indo-Pacific region. 5 years ago, in 2013, I spoke at the Shangri-La Dialogue on North Korea's nuclear weapons and missile programs. I described them as a serious threat that would undermine the peace and security of the international community, and that it was absolutely unacceptable. I also stated that Japan, in close coordination with the United States and South Korea, strongly called on North Korea to comply with the obligations pursuant to relevant United Nations Security Council resolutions, and to halt acts of provocations, and to take concrete actions towards denuclearization. I also touched on North Korea's abduction issue, as this was relevant to countries around the world, including Thailand, Lebanon, Romania, in addition to Japan and South Korea. I asked for cooperation in resolving such a violation of basic human rights, as this was a universal problem for the international community as a whole. This was 5 years ago, and I remember enjoying strong support and affirmative remarks from the Shangri-La audience. Since then, Japan's stance on North Korea has remained unchanged. In the meantime, however, nuclear and missile programs under the Kim Jong-un regime have further developed. In particular, North Korea has launched as many as 40 ballistic missiles in the last 2 years, with many of them impacting Japan's exclusive economic zone, EEZ. Furthermore, 2 ballistic missiles flew over Japan and fell into the Pacific Ocean over the past year. It is now possible that North Korea's ballistic missiles reach many countries and regions around the world, including the United States mainland, posing a grave threat to the whole international community. As for the nuclear program, North Korea has conducted 3 nuclear tests over the last 2 years, including a test conducted last September, which likely involved the largest explosion ever, estimated to be 10 times as powerful as the atomic bomb that hit Hiroshima. To deal with North Korea's nuclear missile developments, the United Nations Security Council, including China and Russia, has adopted sanction resolutions. The international community has been putting pressure on North Korea in accordance with these resolutions by drastically curbing the supply of crude oil and oil products and cutting its source of foreign currency by restricting coal exports and dispatch of workers to other countries. As a result of internationally concerted pressure, we have started to observe changes in North Korea's rhetoric and behavior since the beginning of this year. Capturing this opportunity, South Korean President Moon Jae-in has taken a proactive step, and the Inter-Korean Summit was held in Panmunjom on April 27th. This summit produced the Panmunjom Declaration for Peace, Prosperity and Unification of the Korean Peninsula, which confirmed in writing the intention of North Korea's chairman of the State Affairs Commission, Kim Jong-un, to work towards complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. I take this as a positive sign towards comprehensive resolution of various issues concerning North Korea. I would like to express my sincere and profound respect to the efforts made by the Korean government led by President Moon and Defense Minister Son to get to where we are today. The U.S.-North Korea Summit, which will take place on June 12th, President Trump has made this announcement, and it is strongly hoped that the summit will become an opportunity for concrete, substantial progress towards a complete, verifiable, and irreversible dismantlement of all North Korea's weapons of mass destruction, including biological and chemical weapons and ballistic missiles of all flight ranges, in addition to a breakthrough in the Japanese abduction issue. Ladies and gentlemen, let us now take a moment to reflect on the last quarter of the century. We have seen history repeat, where North Korea would declare to denuclearize, thereby portraying itself as a conciliatory and forthcoming, only to turn around to void all international efforts towards peace. For example, North Korea once agreed to fulfill the agreed framework between the United States of America and the Democratic People's Republic of Korea in 1994, but it actually continued its nuclear development in secrecy. Similarly, North Korea promised to give up all nuclear weapons and its existing nuclear programs in the joint statement of the 2005 six-party talks. Instead of following through with this promise, Pyongyang went ahead with its first nuclear experiment in 2006, threatening surrounding countries with a series of ballistic missile launches which continued until last year. In light of how North Korea has behaved in the past, I believe that it is important not to reward North Korea solely for agreeing to have a dialogue. The only way to bring peace to the Korean Peninsula is to ensure that North Korea will take concrete actions towards realizing the CVID of all weapons of mass destruction and ballistic missiles of all flight ranges in accordance with a series of UN Security Council resolutions. And I believe that this is the only means to bring about peace in the Korean Peninsula. As defense authorities, we have two major roles to play in resolving these issues. The first role is to maintain current maximum pressure on North Korea in tandem with diplomatic efforts. As U.S. Secretary of Defense Jim Mattis has often said, the role of the defense authorities is to support diplomacy and ensure that the diplomats can speak from a position of strength. North Korea now finds itself seeking peace dialogue with the Republic of Korea and the United States as the result of concerted maximum pressure by the international community. It is essential that the international defense community maintain maximum pressure until North Korea completes the process of CVID for all WMDs and ballistic missiles of all ranges. Just before arriving here, President Trump, who has just received a letter from Kim Jong-un, has reportedly said that he would like to no longer use the term maximum pressure. On the other hand, I know that President Trump said that he would not lift sanctions until North Korea agrees to denuclearization, and I understand that pressure will remain in place. I believe that this will lead to the solution of this challenge. One way to do this is to continue the efforts to prevent North Korea's illegal ship-to-ship transfer of oil and other goods to evade the sanctions originating from UN Security Council resolutions. The Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force and the Japan Coast Guard engage in monitoring and surveillance at sea to give out warnings to suspicious ships. Since April, multinational surveillance activities operating out of Okinawa have been conducted by patrol aircraft of the United States, Canada, and Australia. Although with information gathering efforts by a British Royal Navy warship. We need to maintain these activities under multilateral collaboration.
2点目は
The second point is to maintain and strengthen deterrence until we see North Korea's current position of WMD and ballistic missiles rectified. Defense authorities need to remain fully prepared to respond to any situations that may arise. Japan is working to build up defense capabilities, strengthen vigilance and surveillance against ballistic missiles, and with Japan-US alliance at core, enhance collaboration with countries such as South Korea, Australia through joint exercises and other means. So far, I have discussed how we should draw a pledge out of North Korea on CVID, on WMDs, on ballistic missiles, and on concrete steps to fulfill its promise. However, the international community and defense authorities should take additional steps and to be committed to ensure North Korea's progress even after the country starts taking concrete steps. Some of these phases include the inspection phase at the beginning and verification phase following disposal must undergo adequate processes overseen by international organizations, and this would include IAEA in case of nuclear facilities and OPCW in the case of chemical weapons. Japan has experience in many related areas in this regard, having dispatched personnel with missile and chemical weapons expertise to support Iraq's disposal of WMDs. Japan has also sent many JSDF personnel to OPCW and has first-hand experience in removing highly poisonous chemical sarin following gas attack on Tokyo subway. If North Korea is seriously committed to dismantling its WMDs, Japan is ready to give full support where we have expertise, including through the dispatch of personnel to the OPCW and training personnel from international organizations at JGSDF Chemical School. In addition, until the disposal of WMDs is complete, preventing these arsenals from spreading to third countries and terrorists is another important issue. Japan has been an active participant in the Proliferation Security Initiative, and perhaps we can reinforce these efforts by strengthening collaboration through multilateral training and providing capacity-building assistance to partner countries in the region to enhance collaboration between defense and law enforcement authorities in the future. As we have just seen, members of defense authorities are making a concerted efforts to address the issue of North Korea, but Indo-Pacific region has also various risks of geopolitical and geo-economic nature, and that we must address at the same time. Natural disasters, which may be referred to as geophysical risks, are one example of extreme security risks that need to be addressed by this region as a whole. The Pacific Rim and coastal areas of Indian Ocean is particularly prone to large-scale natural disasters such as mega earthquake and tsunami, volcanic eruptions, and typhoons and cyclones. Climate change may also exacerbate the risk of natural disasters. My hometown of Miyagi Prefecture was badly affected by the Great Earthquake in Japan of 2011. On my personal level, my home did not escape damage. But much more tragically, many lives were lost as a result of this disaster. However, countries from around the world quickly sent relief missions who saved many lives by working closely with relevant ministries and agencies, including the Japan Self-Defense Force, hoping to reciprocate this warm support from all over the world and to make most out of our experience. Japan now engages in capacity building assistance with ASEAN and other countries in the field of HADR. Our tragic experience has proven that many lives can be saved if defense authorities and around the world cooperate closely on the actual job of disaster relief. To ensure regional stability and prosperity, we need to collaborate. We need a concerted approach, across the region in addressing various security challenges, including those of maritime security and terrorism. The Indo-Pacific is increasingly becoming the center of global economy, and we hope to contribute to efforts to maintain it as a free, open, and rule-based global commons that can bring wealth and prosperity to all countries in the region. Japan seeks to enhance a free and open Indo-Pacific as part of its regional strategy, that we will do so with maximum regard and respect to ASEAN's centrality and unity, so that it will help further the development of ASEAN, which is central to security in the Indo-Pacific. Economic prosperity can be achieved only if peace and stability are ensured. This is why defense authorities of the region must work together and address various security risks in collaboration. Distinguished guests, my fellow defense ministers and members of defense establishment, I feel very certain that we can all demonstrate unity in ensuring the security of each country, its people, as well as that of the region, and this is in turn will help us successfully overcome the issue of North Korea and add huge momentum in maintaining peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific region. It's necessary for us to address the security challenges of today under a long-term approach and holding a vision for a distant future. Therefore, it is vital that cooperative relationship enjoyed by defense authorities today are passed down to young officers who work hard at the forefront of national defense. When Great East Japan earthquake occurred, young members of Japan Self-Defense Forces and foreign militaries, such as U.S. forces who came to Japan to give us assistance, saved many lives in the affected areas in cooperation with each other. We believe that Kizuna, or comradeship, is the key to shape the future. Based on this belief, we engaged in various efforts to foster Kizuna, including by inviting young officers from around the world to shipwrighter programs on board Maritime Self-Defense Forces ship. We hope that having a common experience in such programs will help them work together on common security threats, regardless of their positions, in coming 10-20 years when they play leading roles in their defense authorities. Recognizing the importance of fostering these relationships, we will continue to give efforts to form Kizuna among young officers who have the future in their hands. Ladies and gentlemen, please take a moment to imagine North Korea being inside the circle of such Kizuna. In North Korea, precious lives were taken away by many natural disasters, such as the large-scale flood caused by a typhoon in 2016. If North Korea, having solved the issues of abduction, nuclear and missile development, comes back to international society, it will not only benefit North Korea, but also further strengthen the peace and stability of this region. To realize this, I would like to again underline that it is important that North Korea takes concrete measures towards comprehensive solution of these issues. Japan continues to work together with the like-minded countries to maintain the peace and stability in this region. Lastly, once again, on 12th June here in Singapore, there is a plan to have U.S. and North Korea summit, and we hope every success for the summit meeting. Thank you very much.
Onodera-san, thank you very much for those remarks, and I think the audience will have noted in particular your reminder of quite how many ballistic missiles from North Korea had a direct impact on your EEZ, and your call to not reward the DPRK solely for having a dialogue, and finally your reminder that at this time pressure, maximum or otherwise, will need to remain in place, and your desire to strengthen deterrence in collaboration in particular with the Republic of Korea and Australia. I'm sure all those issues will also be raised in our debate. Could I now please ask the Canadian Minister of Defence to address this plenary?
Dr. Chipman, I want to first of all thank you to IISS for hosting us here today. As you stated, this is my third time here as a defense minister, and it's always a grateful conversation to have with all of you from the different perspectives. Ministers, distinguished guests, friends, we come together at an important time. It's a time of hope, but also a time of uncertainty in this region. Let me assure you, though, Canada will always stand with our partners. We will always stand up for international peace and security. We believe that a diplomatic solution to instability on the Korean Peninsula is possible and remains the best way forward. As we have said, North Korea's rapid escalation of its nuclear and ballistic missile development stands in contravention of the United Nations Security Council resolutions. It represents a threat to the region and a growing threat to our world. In the face of these aggressive actions, the international community has responded with a unified voice. We are unified in our unwavering belief in a rules-based order. The United Nations Security Council has imposed its most severe and restrictive sanctions to date. Around the world, there has been strong support for a maximum pressure campaign, a campaign to encourage North Korea to commit to completely, verifiably, and irreversibly dismantling its nuclear and ballistic missile programs. Over the past several months, there have been some encouraging signs of progress toward productive dialogue. We have seen high-level meetings, 2 visits by Kim Jong-un to China, ongoing preparatory meetings in Singapore, and the summit between the leaders of North and South Korea. The international community was encouraged by North Korea's announced moratorium on nuclear and ballistic missile tests, along with its vow to dismantle its nuclear testing facilities. These are steps in the right direction, but we must not forget that anything short of complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization is unacceptable. Canada is also encouraged by the ongoing discussions between the United States and North Korea, and we are hopeful for more positive momentum, and especially with the upcoming summit here in Singapore in about 10 days. But in order to maintain an atmosphere that is conducive to talks, North Korea must show that it is willing to take tangible steps toward meeting its international obligations. However, the possibility that North Korea will not willingly give up its nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles means that the situation remains unstable, and the challenge before us remains urgent. As we consider how best to confront this challenge, we must never lose sight of the fact that a nuclear North Korea is not only a regional threat, it poses a real and growing global threat and puts millions of lives at risk. Moreover, the country's disregard of international pressure and opinion may have other consequences. For instance, non-nuclear nations may be emboldened by North Korea to attempt to develop their own programs. As well, the risk of North Korea proliferating nuclear material and expertise should concern all of us. The global security of nuclear technology and weapons may be eroded, emboldening states and actors who seek to bring terror and destabilization. There's always been, and there remains, a peaceful route to a positive resolution for the world and for North Korea. The United States and the Republic of Korea have been clear in their intentions. There is no plan to seek a regime change or collapse in North Korea. There is no plan to seek accelerated reunification. They do not seek an excuse to send troops north of the 38th parallel. If North Korea changes course, there is a foundation for building a brighter future. So long as North Korea commits to abandoning its nuclear and ballistic missile development and returning to stability on the peninsula. Canada believes a peaceful, diplomatic solution is essential and possible. But experience has taught us that the international community must move cautiously. North Korea has failed to deliver on promises in the past, and the world should judge its sincerity by its actions. North Korea signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, but also advanced a clandestine nuclear weapons program. Later pledges by North Korea, including in the six-party talks in 2005 and an agreement on denuclearization in 2007, led to an easing of sanctions and international commitments to respect sovereignty. But North Korea continued to develop nuclear and ballistic missile technology, first in secret and then in the open. And that is why denuclearization must not only be complete, not only irreversible, but also verifiable. We must remain united in this goal and in the actions we take to achieve it. No matter where we live in the world, the people that we represent all have a stake in achieving a solution. We must therefore continue to demonstrate our solidarity. A strong, clear, and consistent multilateral message is key to ensuring that North Korea fully appreciates that the world will not accept its nuclear and ballistic missile development. But our unified message must be backed by measures that stop illegal efforts to evade sanctions. Our message must be backed by measures that prevent the proliferation of nuclear technology both on and off the peninsula. To support the full enforcement of sanctions, nations with more developed structures must provide assistance to others in enhancing their infrastructure and regulatory frameworks. Together, we must maintain pressure on North Korea to participate in genuine and responsible negotiations. Together, we must work to share information on sanction evasion activities to ensure that they are publicly exposed and that those involved are held accountable. And together, we must use all diplomatic opportunities to stress to the North Korean leadership the benefits of abandoning the path of hostility and stress the benefits of becoming a responsible member of the international community. North Korea would enjoy a newfound flexibility to focus on improving the lives of its citizens, the freedom to explore economic improvement in its own way and under its own terms, the ability to move toward reconciliation with its southern neighbor, and the normalization of relations with the international community. I can tell you today that the Canadian government fully supports and has fully implemented all sanctions approved by the United Nations Security Council. And beyond that, we have put in place additional sanctions of our own to encourage North Korea to abandon its nuclear program and join the international community. Earlier this year in Vancouver, Minister Freeland, Canada's Minister of Foreign Affairs, co-hosted 20 foreign ministers and representatives from around the world to discuss new diplomatic approaches to the security challenges on the peninsula. At this meeting, Canada committed funding to strengthen the global sanctions regime by building the capacity of partner countries to more effectively implement Security Council resolutions. I am also pleased to tell you that Canada will be increasing its commitment to the United Nations Command this summer and assuming greater leadership and responsibility in the region. This enhanced commitment is highlighted by the recent appointment of Lieutenant General Wayne Eyre, here with us today, who will serve as Deputy Commander of the United Nations Command in Korea. And to note This is the first time the post has been held by a non-American general. General Eyre has served Canada well, and I know that he will serve the United Nations with this distinction. Canada has engaged with partner nations to establish a framework for the release and sharing of information regarding sanction evasion activities. This will help publicly expose responsible parties and encourage tightened enforcement of sanctions. Canada has also deployed a long-range maritime patrol aircraft for surveillance as part of the international effort to locate and expose sanction evasion activities on the high seas. And if called upon, we are willing to do more. But looking to the future, Canada will continue to wield a consistent defense presence in the Asia-Pacific region to encourage peace and security. This includes the deployment of 2 frigates and a supply ship to the region, one of which is already operating in Southeast Asia as we speak. So, ladies and gentlemen, we cannot accept North Korea as a nuclear state. If we are to succeed in our mission to enhance peace in the region and around the world, the complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization of North Korea is the only acceptable outcome. It is the only path to the country's acceptance into the international community. It is the only path to increased security for the region and the world. Together, let us continue our unified efforts to encourage North Korea to engage honestly in diplomacy. Canada will always stand up for international peace and security. We will always stand with our partners to promote denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula. We must all stand together for a peaceful resolution to this long-standing security challenge. Thank you very much.
Minister Singh, thank you very much for those remarks and for reminding us of Canada's now increasingly direct role in maintaining peace and security on the Korean Peninsula, and for your endorsement of the CVID goal for the negotiations that are now about to be embarked on. So we have 8 or 9 people on the list. I will, by the way, give preference to those who I wasn't able to include in the last session. So first on my list, who actually fell in that category, is Dr. Valérie Niquet from France.
Thank you. I think there was a big elephant which was not in the room this morning. It is China. How would you evaluate the role China, it's a question to the panel, the role China is playing in trying to solve in a constructive way the tensions and issues on the Korean Peninsula? Thank you.
Thank you. And what I'll do is I'll take about 5 or 6 questions in a group and then come back to the panel. Fleur de Villiers.
Thank you, John. It's a question that I would like to address to Secretary Mattis, but equally Minister Singh. There seems to have been a change in a rather important change in the semantics of the discussion of the negotiations, and that is a shift both by America and by South Korea in describing using the term the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, which previously, I believe, was the approach adopted by the DPRK. And I wondered if this was a significant advance. I doubt whether it was a diplomatic slip of the tongue.
Also from the IISS, Mark Fitzpatrick.
Thank you. Minister Song, I join those who praise the administration of President Moon Jae-in in promoting the efforts that has brought us to the cusp of a historic summit in Singapore. The big issue for this summit, besides who will pay for Kim Jong-un's hotel room, is what does denuclearization mean for North Korea? You mentioned complete denuclearization. a couple of times. But do you really think North Korea will give up nuclear weapons after all the efforts it has put into it and after the times that it changed its position, as Minister Onodera mentioned? You spoke of complete denuclearization of the Korean peninsula. There are no nuclear weapons in the southern part of the peninsula. So what does it mean for North Korea? Do they want U.S. troops to leave? Would you be willing to see that? Thank you, sir.
And also from the U.S., Dr. Robert Kelly.
Thank you. My question is similar to the previous one. So I think many people in the analyst community believe that CVID is unlikely. The North Koreans will probably reject that. They did spend 40 years developing these weapons. They endured extraordinary isolation to get them. It seems fairly amazing to think they would give them up without massive concessions, something really big such as the end of the alliance or something like that. So I guess my question is, are there less than CVID outcomes that might be acceptable? And if so, what would they be, please? Thank you.
And from Malaysia, Dr. Hu Chu Ping.
Thank you. I have a question on how to hold North Korea accountable. So close coordination with major stakeholders would be the key. So to what extent the ROK government has cooperated with China on North Korea policy? And would Moon Jae-in government improve relations with Japan, of which there is still unresolved historical disputes? And also Russia that has just invited Kim Jong-un to visit Moscow. Thank you.
And from the UK, Richard Lloyd Parry.
Thank you. No one knows, of course, what will be the outcome of the summit between Mr. Kim and Mr. Trump. But one possibility is a situation where North Korea will eliminate long-range nuclear weapons capable of striking the United States, but retain shorter-range nuclear weapons which could attack South Korea and Japan, and obviously that would be to South Korea and Japan's disadvantage. So I'd like to ask the ministers from those two countries, have you received assurances that that outcome would be unacceptable to the United States?
Thank you. I'll take a couple more in this round before going back to the panel. Professor Jae-hoo Wang from South Korea.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have two short questions. The first question to Korean Defense Minister Song. There are still some suspicions and doubts on sincerity of recent North Korea's change. I wonder your perspective on this. The second question is for Japan Minister Onodera. We are aware of Japan's concerns regarding kidnapping and intermediate range missiles issues and so on. However, just timing matters. I consider this is a time for concentrating on only the denuclearization. Only when the first step succeeds, the next can succeed also. But it seems Japan's attitude doesn't go along with current international flows. So I would like to hear your opinion on this. Thank you.
And from China, Colonel Yu Lin.
Thank you, Chair. In fact, my question is a little bit similar to Mr. Fitzpatrick. We know that the U.S. and North Korea is expected to meet, but we know that there are some big differences as to the paths toward denuclearization between these two countries. So my question is to Defense Minister Song from the Republic of Korea, is how the U.S. and South Korea handle the differences between them and North Korea as to the paths toward denuclearization. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's now time to return to the panel, and I'll give a couple of minutes first to Minister Soon to answer the questions on denuclearization, what that means, on cooperation with China, CVID, short-range weapons, then to Onodera-san, to whom some of those questions are also asked, but also talk about the relationship with China. And then if Minister Singh has a perspective to add, we'll enjoy that. And do be reassured, I will come back to the floor. There's half a dozen other people, and we will get you in before we close at 11:15. Minister Sun.
Yeah, there are many overlaps between the 8 questionnaires. I will try to answer them all. First and foremost, North Korea's denuclearization and what it means was the first question. CVID ultimately means something that is a promise that we have to achieve. Korean Peninsula's denuclearization. Regarding that, there are some people who raise questions why we talk about that when South Korea does not have any nuclear weapons. But I believe that North Korea understands that there are nuclear threats that exist around Korean Peninsula, and the perspective regarding denuclearization and the Korea, U.S., and North Korea's denuclearization perspective are all different, is what I've heard. But once we start to think that they are different, then I do not think that it is possible for us to achieve any kind of success at the speech. And so we must aim for CVID, and we must approach it with the commitment to verification. And once we show our sincerity, North Korea will also embrace the concept as it comes out to the international community. Furthermore, the short-range ballistic missiles was another question I received regarding a threat to Korea and Japan. As North Korea comes out to international community on an international stage and achieves economic cooperation and development, then as it forms diplomatic ties with the free world, I believe that such threat will eventually dissipate over time. This is because there is no reason for them to continue to develop and maintain a weapon that they do not need to use, because this puts a limitation on the resources that they could be using for economic development. And as such, once the Korean Peninsula's peace is achieved, then in turn we will naturally also achieve arms control negotiation, and which will be the path that we must take. And I would also like to add that once North Korea takes its place among the international stage, achieves economic development, and achieves a freer society for the North Korean people, then Chairman Kim Jong-un is looking to make decisive actions towards that goal. But if we are to continue to suspect his motives, then any kind of developments to achieve that will be hindered by these suspicions. So as we try to take this path forward, then we must be helping each other, and then the free world, China and Russia, should be looking to support our efforts and support this phenomena, so that it can justify Chairman Kim Jong-un's actions and convince North Korean people that this is the right way forward. And I believe that time is coming. And so I would like to implore the international community's continued support to this end, that which was the agenda that I wanted to address at our speech. I believe this sufficiently addresses your questions. If there are any more questions, please go ahead.
Allow me to respond to the questions that were addressed to me. First of all, in regards to the role of China. Well, North Korea's change in policy was the result of the UN Security Council resolutions, which also involve China and Russia. Especially China is the largest trade partner of North Korea. and therefore the economic sanctions has had a major impact on North Korea. I think this is for sure that this has been the case, and the international community needs to be united in trying to get North Korea to resolve the issue of the nuclear weapons, missile, and abduction issues. Now, about the short-range ballistic missile that the questioner asked about, South Korea and Japan, and we both have host U.S. forces, and both countries have a number of large visitors coming to Japan and South Korea from overseas. And therefore, be it the short-range missile, I think this is a common global threat. And including the short range, I think all ballistic missiles need to be dismantled. And I and Secretary Mattis, my counterpart, have talked about this a few days ago. And again, we have confirmed this to be the case. And likewise, I understand I share the same thinking with Minister Song about the abduction issue. Well, several months ago, many fishermen from North Korea came to the shores of Japan, and so they were saved by Japan. And these fishermen from North Korea that we are caring for, we have to make sure that they can be sent back to North Korea. And this is from a humanitarian assistance perspective that we have done so. Japan understands there are still Japanese abductees in North Korea. And so just like the nuclear missile issue, Japan is keen to resolve also the abduction issue. Japan thinks that the abduction, nuclear, and missile issues are all something that needs to be resolved. We want the North Koreans to be able to enjoy a rich and peaceful life. And I think that this is something that the international community is also wanting to see. And therefore, now we want North Korea to change its policy. It's the timing for us to make them change their policy.
Thank you very much. Minister Singh has said he wants to hear more questions from the floor, so we'll have 5 more and then we'll close. So could I first ask Ankit Panda from the U.S.
Thank you for the floor. I have a question for South Korean Defense Minister. My question has to do with the issue of U.S. troops remaining in South Korea after the process that began on April 27th with the Panmunjom Declaration presumably reaches its apotheosis, which is a peace treaty between the South and the North. Some commentators, including advisors to President Moon, have said that it would be difficult to justify the presence of U.S. troops in South Korea after a peace treaty is reached. Could the Defense Minister kindly comment on that issue, and if there is a way that South Korea as a sovereign state can still choose to have U.S. troops remain in the country after a peace treaty?
William Chung from Singapore and the IISS.
Thank you, John. This is a follow-up question on the shorter range ballistic missile question that was raised. I wanted to ask Minister Onodera, can Japan actually accept the situation in which there's actually CVID minus, where there's shorter range ballistic missiles being retained in North Korea? A more direct way of asking that is Japan has considered what I will call Godzilla-style options before. What I mean is we are talking about cruise missiles. We are talking about even abandoning the 3-no principles on nuclear weapons. And so will Japan, in a rare and very drastic scenario, actually think about these harder, should we say, preventative or even preemptive strike options in the event that shorter range missiles are retained in North Korea? Thank you.
And from Malaysia, Prasant Parameswaran.
Thanks, John. My question is for Minister Song from South Korea. At the Fullerton Forum earlier this year, you mentioned not only the North Korea threat, but also some of the additional security roles that South Korea was planning to play, including in Southeast Asia, and you made reference to the new Southern policy under the Moon administration. as well as a new maritime security forum for Northeast Asia. I'm wondering if you have any updates or what your assessment is on those two particular initiatives, particularly the new Southern policy under the Moon administration. We've seen some progress with respect to individual Southeast Asian states, but I think there is some sort of worry or uncertainty that as South Korea focuses on the North Korea threat, we may see some of that momentum go away in the months that follow. So I'm wondering if you can provide some details on that front. Thank you.
And from Canada, Michael Kovrig.
Thank you. My question for the ministers is, clearly in the North Korean situation, there's a great concern about North Korea's regime security. And I'm wondering what role, if any, you can imagine for your governments in somehow trying to assuage or address those security concerns as a means to furthering a process of denuclearization.
Two more questions, and then we'll return to the panel for their concluding remarks. From Vietnam, Colonel Tran.
Xin cảm ơn các ngài Bộ trưởng, và tôi xin hỏi Bộ trưởng Quốc phòng Hàn Quốc là theo ngài cần trở ngại lớn nhất trong tiến trình phi hạt nhân hóa bán đảo Triều Tiên là gì? Hết.
And the question from Vietnam, and my question is for the Minister of South Korea. So according to you, what is the biggest challenge in the issue of denuclearization in the North Korea Peninsula? Thank you.
Thank you. And from Myanmar, Nyantharmor Lin.
Hello. Hi, thank you. The question is also for the minister from the ROK. A lot of this discussion seems predicated on a confidence in the endurance of Chairman Kim and his regime. What gives you that confidence? And can you speak to whether or not going down this path for North Korea will pose a potential threat to his regime?
Thank you very much. So I think we'll go in the order in which the speakers originally delivered their remarks. A heavy burden sits with Minister Soon, since many of the questions were addressed to him. So Minister Soon first, a couple of minutes, Onodera-san, and then Minister Singh. Thank you very much. Minister Soon.
먼저 질문하신 분은
The first question, as I recall, was regarding the U.S. forces in Korea. The U.S. versus Korea is a separate issue from North Korea's nuclear issue. The U.S. forces Korea stay in Korean Peninsula to maintain stability and peace on the Korean Peninsula and Northeast Asia. As we open a new era of peace, in order to prepare for that new era, our ROK-US alliance has to develop in accordance to guarantee the security of the region. A certain professor talked about his own personal opinion in a certain journal, but it does not reflect the views of the Ministry of National Defense of Korea or the Korean government.
두 번째 질문은 Onodera.
The second question regarding the short-range ballistic missile, I am sure the Minister Onodera will be able to answer. In January, I spoke at the Fullerton Forum. After January, starting with the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics, leading all the way up to the 27th of April Korean Summit and the second Korean Summit on the 26th of May, and now the upcoming U.S.-North Korea Summit on the 12th of June, the entire world is working towards peace. The new Southern policy of the Korean government, as well as the maintenance our stance that we have to maintain sea lines of communication through South China Seas and other oceans, and President Moon Jae-in's new Southern policy and Northern policy and our efforts towards world peace will continue. So do not doubt us on our commitment towards this. And another question I received was regarding our actions and our way forward as North Korean situation changes. As Minister Onodera has mentioned regarding commitments and promises made in the past regarding North Korea, but I have to say that the times are different. North Korea has a new leader now. And I believe that North Korea is looking to change the course of history and is making a decisive action towards that. Just because we have been tricked by North Korea before does not guarantee that we will be tricked in the future. If we start to think like this, then we can never negotiate with them and we can never look to achieve peace with them. And the leaders of the two Koreas, the efforts made by them are looking to open a new era. Please understand this. Furthermore, the biggest issue to denuclearization and the continuity of the North Korean regime was the question I received. From the perspective of North Korea and Chairman Kim's continuity and endurance of the regime is a very important issue to the North Korean regime, and to North Korean people as well as Chairman Kim would like to open up and reform while maintaining the current regime and improve the quality of life for its people, and also become a responsible member of the international community. That is the focus that we are looking at right now, and that is the areas of interest that we are looking to support them to achieve their own objective. And so President Moon Jae-in has never asserted unification by absorption or any kind of artificial unification through artificial means. We're looking for a peaceful system, one of coexistence. That has been our consistent principle, and we are imploring the international community's support. Thank you.
Well, in regards to Japan, I think there was a question of if the short-range missiles remain, what would Japan do? Well, our common understanding is that the short-range ballistic missiles included all ballistic missiles need to be abandoned. And this is what we're going to demand from North Korea. And Japan, in the past, as a peaceful nation, has never been equipped to commit aggression against other countries. We, into the future, will maintain our 3 no policies in regards to nuclear weapons, and Japan is hoping that we will be free from nuclear threat in the future. Japan will continue its efforts towards this goal. And also, as was mentioned by Minister Song, we are seeing this young leader in North Korea. We're hoping that he will make a wise decision and that he will give a clear answer to our concerns. And I think this will lead the way to a bright future. What we are concerned about, if I may repeat, is the nuclear weapons, missile, and abduction issues be resolved. This is what we want to see, a resolution to these problems. And I think the North Korean people think the same way. And I know that they want to have a peaceful, rich life. This is our common understanding.
Thank you. As I stated, it's Canada's approach to this is approach it with cautious optimism, but it is optimism. And moving forward, I think as all defense ministers here will agree, we have enough security challenges around the world. Taking this opportunity in a concrete manner is a good step. But I just want to be able to close. The sincerity will be judged by concrete action. And even though, as the minister said, previous actions has not been sincere. This does not mean that it's not going to be going in that direction, and we need to give every opportunity to move forward. But at the same time, we as an international community must remain unified in our approach. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, I think we've had an excellent session. I detect that many people in the room, some have even pointed out that there remain perhaps some differences of perspective, emphasis, and even ultimate negotiating goals amongst those who have spoken here today. And perhaps in the ministerial discussions that will continue over this weekend, including the trilateral meeting between the defense ministers of the United States, the ROK, and Japan, some of those gaps that some people will have perceived and others have underscored will be closed in the defense diplomatic efforts that are undertaken over this weekend. But for the formal statements and for their frank answers to the questions, I hope that all of you will join me in thanking the ministers, that you will retreat to the coffee break and return within 20 minutes. Thank you very much.